Foreword to Utopia by Sir Thomas More. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ruth Golding. Foreword by William Morris. Ralph Robinson's translation of More's Utopia would not need any foreword if it were to be looked upon merely as a beautiful book embodying the curious fancies of a great writer and thinker of the period of the Renaissance. No doubt till within the last few years it has been considered by the moderns as nothing more serious than a charming literary exercise, spiced with the interest given to it by the allusions to the history of the time, and by our knowledge of the career of its author. But the change of ideas concerning the best state of a public weal, which, I will venture to say, is the great event of the end of this century, has thrown a fresh light upon the book, so that now to some it seems not so much a regret for days which might have been, as, in its essence, a prediction of a state of society which will be. In short, this work of the scholar and Catholic, of the man who resisted what has seemed to most the progressive movement of his own time, has in our days become a socialist tract, familiar to the meetings and debating rooms of the political party which was but lately like the cloud as big as a man's hand. Doubtless the Utopia is a necessary part of a socialist's library, yet it seems to me that its value as a book for the study of sociology is rather historic than prophetic, and that we socialists should look upon it as a link between the surviving communism of the Middle Ages, become hopeless in More's time and doomed to be soon wholly effaced by the advancing wave of commercial bureaucracy, and the hopeful and practical progressive movement of today. In fact, I think More must be looked upon rather as the last of the old rather than the first of the new. Apart from what was yet alive in him of mediaeval communist tradition, the spirit of association, which amongst other things produced the guilds, and which was strong in the mediaeval Catholic Church itself, other influences were at work to make him take up his parable against the new spirit of his age. The action of the period of transition from mediaeval to commercial society, with all its brutalities, was before his eyes, and though he was not alone in his time in condemning the injustice and cruelty of the revolution which destroyed the peasant life of England and turned it into a grazing farm for the moneyed gentry, creating withal at one stroke the propertyless wage earner and the masterless vagrant, hodie pauper, yet he saw deeper into its root causes than any other man of his own day, and left us little to add to his views on this point except a reasonable hope that those causes will yield to a better form of society before long. Moreover, the spirit of the Renaissance, itself the intellectual side of the very movement which he strove against, was strong in him, and doubtless helped to create his Utopia, by means of the contrast which it put before his eyes of the ideal free nations of the ancients, and the sordid welter of the struggle for power in the days of dying feudalism, of which he himself was a witness. This Renaissance enthusiasm has supplanted in him the chivalry feeling of the age just passing away. To him war is no longer a delight of the well-born, but rather an ugly necessity, to be carried on, if so it must be, by ugly means. Hunting and hawking are no longer the choice pleasures of knight and lady, but are jeered at by him as foolish and unreasonable pieces of butchery. His pleasures are in the main the reasonable ones of learning and music. With all this, his imaginations of the past he must needs read into his ideal vision, together with his own experiences of his time and people. Not only are there bond-slaves and a king, and priests almost adored, and cruel punishments for the breach of the marriage contract in that happy island, but there is throughout an atmosphere of asceticism which has a curiously blended savour of Cato the Censor and a medieval monk. On the subject of war, on capital punishment, the responsibility to the public of kings and other official personages, and such like matters, More speaks words that would not be out of place in the mouth of an 18th century Jacobin, and at first sight this seems rather to show sympathy with what is now mere Whiggism than with communism. But it must be remembered that opinions which have become, in words, the mere commonplace of ordinary bourgeois politicians were then looked on as pieces of startlingly new and advanced thought, and do not put him on the same plane with the mere radical of the last generation. In More, then, are met together the man instinctively sympathetic with the communistic side of medieval society, the protester against the ugly brutality of the earliest period of commercialism, the enthusiast of the Renaissance, ever looking toward his idealized ancient society as the type and example of all really intelligent human life, the man tinged with the asceticism at once of the classical philosopher and of the monk, an asceticism indeed which he puts forward not so much as a duty, but rather as a kind of stern adornment of life. These are, we may say, the moods of the man who created Utopia for us, and all are tempered and harmonized by a sensitive clearness and delicate beauty of style which make the book a living work of art. But lastly, we Socialists cannot forget that these qualities and excellencies meet to produce a steady expression of the longing for a society of equality of condition, a society in which the individual man can scarcely conceive of his existence apart from the commonwealth of which he forms a portion. This, which is the essence of his book, is the essence also of the struggle in which we are engaged. Though doubtless it was the pressure of circumstances in his own days that made More what he was, yet that pressure forced him to give us, not a vision of the triumph of the new-born capitalistic society, the element in which lived the new learning and the new freedom of thought of his epoch, but a picture, his own indeed, not ours, of the real new birth which many men before him had desired, and which now indeed we may well hope is drawing near to realization, though after such a long series of events which at the time of their happening seemed to nullify his hopes completely. End of the foreword. A fruitful, pleasant, and witty work of the best state of a public weal, and of the new isle called Utopia, written in Latin by the right worthy and famous Sir Thomas More, Knight, and translated into English by Ralph Robinson, sometime Fellow of Corpus Christi College in Oxford, and now by him at this second edition newly perused and corrected, and also with divers notes in the margin augmented. Imprinted at London by Abraham Wheel, dwelling in Paul's Churchyard at the Sign of the Lamb. The Translator to the Gentle Reader. Thou shalt understand, gentle reader, that though this work of Utopia in English come now the second time forth in print, yet was it never my mind nor intent that it should ever have been imprinted at all, as who for no such purpose took upon me at the first the translation thereof, but did it only at the request of a friend for his own private use, upon hope that he would have kept it secret to himself alone. Whom, though I knew to be a man indeed both very witty and also skilful, yet was I certain that in the knowledge of the Latin tongue he was not so well seen as to be able to judge of the fineness or coarseness of my translation. Wherefore I went the more slightly through with it, propounding to myself therein rather to please my said friend's judgment than mine own. to the meanness of whose learning I thought it my part to submit and attemper my style. Lightly, therefore, I overran the whole work, and in short time, with more haste than good speed, I brought it to an end. But as the Latin proverb saith, the hasty bitch bringeth forth blind whelps. For when this my work was finished, the rudeness thereof showed it to be done in post haste. Howbeit, rude and base though it were, yet fortune so ruled the matter that to imprinting it came, and that partly against my will. Howbeit, not being able in this behalf to resist the pithy persuasions of my friends, and perceiving therefore none other remedy but that forth it should, I comforted myself for the time only with this notable saying of Terence: Ita vita est hominum quasi cum ludas tesseris. Si illud quod est maxime opus jactu non cadit, illud quod cecidit forte, id arte ut corrigas. In which verses the poet likeneth or compareth the life of man to a dice-playing or a game at the tables, meaning therein, if that chance rise not which is most for the player's advantage, that then the chance which fortune hath sent ought so cunningly to be played as may be to the player least damage. By the which worthy similitude surely the witty poet giveth us to understand that though in any of our acts and doings, as it oft chanceth, we happen to fail and miss of our good pretensed purpose, so that the success and our intent prove things far odd, yet so we ought with witty circumspection to handle the matter, that no evil or incommodity, as far forth as may be, and as in us lieth, do thereof ensue. According to the which counsel, though I am indeed in comparison of an expert gamester and a cunning player but a very bungler, yet have I in this by chance that on my side unwares hath fallen, so I suppose behaved myself, that as doubtless it might have been of me much more cunningly handled, had I forethought so much, or doubted any such sequel at the beginning of my play, so I am sure it had been much worse than it is, if I had not in the end looked somewhat earnestly to my game. For though this work came not from me so fine, so perfect, and so exact, that at first as surely for my small learning it should have done if I had then meant the publishing thereof in print, yet I trust I have now in this second edition taken about it such pains that very few great faults and notable errors are in it to be found. Now, therefore, most gentle reader, the meanness of this simple translation, and the faults that be therein, as I fear much there be some, I doubt not but thou wilt, in just consideration of the premises, gently and favourably wink at them. So doing, thou shalt minister unto me good cause to think my labour and pains herein not altogether bestowed in vain. Vale. End of foreword and translator's note. Of Utopia by Sir Thomas More, translated by Ralph Robinson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Epistle. Thomas More to Peter Giles sendeth greeting. I am almost ashamed, right well beloved Peter Giles, to send unto you this book of the Utopian Commonwealth, well nigh after a year's space, which I am sure you looked for within a month and a half, and no marvel. For you knew well enough that I was already disburdened of all the labour and study belonging to the invention in this work, and that I had no need at all to trouble my brains about the disposition or conveyance of the matter, and therefore had herein nothing else to do but only to rehearse those things which you and I togethers heard Master Raphael tell and declare. Wherefore there was no cause why I should study to set forth the matter with eloquence, forasmuch as his talk could not be fine and eloquent, being first not studied for, but sudden and unpremeditate, and then, as you know, of a man better seen in the Greek language than in the Latin tongue, and my writing, the nigher it should approach to his homely, plain, and simple speech, so much the nigher should it go to the truth, which is the only mark whereunto I do and ought to direct all my travail and study herein. I grant and confess, friend Peter, myself discharged of so much labour, having all these things ready done to my hand, that almost there was nothing left for me to do. Else either the invention or the disposition of this matter might have required of a wit neither base, neither at all unlearned, both some time and leisure, and also some study. But if it were requisite and necessary that the matter should also have been written eloquently and not alone truly, of a surety that thing could I have performed by no time nor study. But now, seeing all these cares, stays, and lets were taken away, wherein else so much labour and study should have been employed, and that there remained no other thing for me to do but only to write plainly the matter as I heard it spoken, that indeed was a thing light and easy to be done. Howbeit, to the dispatching of this so little business, my other cares and troubles did leave almost less than no leisure. Whiles I do daily bestow my time about law matters, some to plead, some to hear, some as an arbitrator with mine award to determine, some as an umpire or a judge with my sentence finally to discuss. Whiles I go one way to see and visit my friend, another way about mine own private affairs. Whiles I spend almost all the day abroad amongst other, and the residue at home among mine own, I leave to myself, I mean to my book, no time. For when I am come home, I must common with my wife, chat with my children, and talk with my servants. All the which things I reckon and account among business, for as much as they must of necessity be done, and done must they needs be, unless a man will be stranger in his own house. And in anywise a man must so fashion and order his conditions, and so appoint and dispose himself, that he be merry, jocund, and pleasant among them whom either nature hath provided, or chance hath made, or he himself hath chosen to be the fellows and companions of his life, so that with too much gentle behaviour and familiarity he do not mar them, and by too much sufferance of his servants make them his masters. Among these things now rehearsed stealeth away the day, the month, the year. When do I write then? And all this while I have spoken no word of sleep, neither yet of meat, which among a great number doth waste no less time than doeth sleep, wherein almost half the lifetime of man creepeth away. I therefore do win and get only that time which I steal from sleep and meat. Which time, because it is very little, and yet somewhat it is, therefore have I once at the last, though it belong first, finished Utopia, and have sent it to you, friend Peter, to read and peruse, to the intent that if any thing have escaped me, you might put me in remembrance of it. For though in this behalf I do not greatly mistrust myself, which would God I were somewhat in wit and learning, as I am not all of the worst and dullest memory, yet have I not so great trust and confidence in it, that I think nothing could fall out of my mind. For John Clement, my boy, who, as you know, was there present with us, whom I suffer to be away from no talk wherein may be any profit or goodness, for out of this young bladed and new shot up corn, which hath already begun to spring up, both in Latin and Greek learning, I look for plentiful increase at length of goodly ripe grain. He, I say, hath brought me into a great doubt. For whereas Hythloday, unless my memory fail me, said that the bridge of Amorot, which goeth over the river of Anida, is 500 paces, that is to say 1/2 mile in length, my John saith that 200 of those paces must be plucked away, for that the river containeth there not above 300 paces in breadth. I pray you heartily call the matter to your remembrance. For if you agree with him, I also will say as you say, and confess myself deceived. But if you cannot remember the thing, then surely I will write as I have done, and as mine own remembrance serveth me. For as I will take good heed that there be in my book nothing false, so if there be anything doubtful, I will rather tell a lie than make a lie, because I had rather be good than wily. Howbeit, this matter may easily be remedied, if you will take the pains to ask the question of Raphael himself, by word of mouth, if he be now with you, or else by your letters. Which you must needs do for another doubt also that hath chanced, through whose fault I cannot tell, whether through mine, or yours, or Raphael's, for neither we remembered to inquire of him, nor he to tell us, in what part of the new world Utopia is situate. The which thing I had rather have spent no small sum of money than that it should thus have escaped us. As well for that I am ashamed to be ignorant in what sea that island standeth whereof I write so long a treatise, as also because there be with us certain men, and especially one virtuous and godly man, and a professor of divinity, who is exceeding desirous to go unto Utopia, not for a vain and curious desire to see news, but to the intent he may further and increase our religion, which is there already luckily begun. And that he may the better accomplish and perform this his good intent, he is minded to procure that he may be sent thither by the High Bishop. Yea, and that he himself may be made Bishop of Utopia, being nothing scrupulous herein, that he must obtain this bishopric with suit. For he counteth that a godly suit, which proceedeth not of the desire of honour or lucre, but only of a godly zeal. Wherefore I most earnestly desire you, friend Peter, to talk with Hythloday, if you can, face to face, or else to write your letters to him, and so to work in this matter, that in this my book there may neither anything be found which is untrue, neither anything be lacking which is true. And I think verily it shall be well done that you show unto him the book itself. For if I have missed or failed in any point, or if any fault have escaped me, no man can so well correct and amend it as he can. And yet that can he not do unless he peruse and read over my book written. Moreover, by this means shall you perceive whether he be well willing and content that I should undertake to put this work in writing. For if he be minded to publish and put forth his own labours and travels himself, perchance he would be loath, and so would I also, that in publishing the Utopian Wheel public I should prevent him, and take from him the flower and grace of the novelty of this his history. Howbeit, to say the very truth, I am not yet fully determined with myself whether I will put forth my book or no. For the natures of men be so divers, the fantasies of some so wayward, their minds so unkind, their judgments so corrupt, that they which lead a merry and a jocund life, following their own sensual pleasures and carnal lusts, may seem to be in a much better state or case than they that vex and unquiet themselves with cares and study for the putting forth and publishing of something that may be either profit or pleasure to others, which others nevertheless will disdainfully, scornfully, and unkindly accept the same. The most part of all be unlearned, and a great number hath learning in contempt. The rude and barbarous alloweth nothing but that which is very barbarous indeed. If it be one that hath a little smack of learning, he rejecteth as homely gear and common wear whatsoever is not stuffed full of old moth-eaten terms, and that be worn out of use. Some there be that have pleasure only in old rustic antiquities, and some only in their own doings. One is so sour, so crabbed, and so unpleasant, that he can away with no mirth nor sport. another is so narrow between the shoulders that he can bear no jests nor taunts. Some silly poor souls be so afeard that at every snappish word their nose shall be bitten off, that they stand in no less dread of every quick and sharp word than he that is bitten of a mad dog feareth water. Some be so mutable and wavering that every hour they be in a new mind, saying one thing sitting and another thing standing. Another sort sitteth upon their ale-benches, and there among their cups they give judgment of the wits of writers, and with great authority they condemn, even as pleaseth them, every writer according to his writing, in most spiteful manner mocking, louting, and flouting them, being themselves in the mean season safe, and, as saith the proverb, out of all danger of gunshot. For why, they be so smug and smooth that they have not so much as one ear of an honest man whereby one may take hold of them. There be, moreover, some so unkind and ungentle that though they take great pleasure and delectation in the work, yet for all that they cannot find in their hearts to love the author thereof, nor to afford him a good word, being much like uncourteous, unthankful, and churlish guests, which, when they have with good and dainty meats well filled their bellies, depart home, giving no thanks to the feast-maker. Go your ways now, and make a costly feast at your own charges, for guests so dainty-mouthed, so divers in taste, and besides that, of so unkind and unthankful natures. But, nevertheless, friend Peter, do I pray you with Hythloday, as I willed you before. And as for this matter, I shall be at my liberty afterwards to take new advisement. Howbeit, seeing I have taken great pains and labour in writing the matter, if it may stand with his mind and pleasure, I will, as touching the edition or publishing of the book, follow the counsel and advice of my friends, and specially yours. Thus fare you well, right heartily beloved friend Peter, with your gentle wife, and love me as you have ever done, for I love you better than ever I did. End of the Epistle. Section 2 of Utopia by Sir Thomas More, translated by Ralph Robinson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The first book of the communication of Raphael Hythloday concerning the best state of a commonwealth. The most victorious and triumphant King of England, Henry VIII of that name, in all royal virtues a prince most peerless, had of late, in controversy with Charles, the right high and mighty King of Castile, weighty matters and of great importance. For the debatement and final determination whereof the King's Majesty sent me ambassador into Flanders, joined in commission with Cuthbert Tunstall, a man doubtless out of comparison, and whom the King's Majesty of late, to the great rejoicing of all men, did prefer to the office of Master of the Rolls. But of this man's praises I will say nothing, not because I do fear that small credence shall be given to the testimony that cometh out of a friend's mouth, but because his virtue and learning be greater and of more excellency than that I am able to praise them, and also in all places so famous and so perfectly well known, that they need not nor ought not of me to be praised, unless I would seem to show and set forth the brightness of the sun with a candle, as the proverb saith.